The new, so to speak, update to the Digital Circus Awards is honestly kinda scary, and while before we could easily pick our favorite, then Kane started making the whole thing harder with a bunch of follow-up questions. Now we just can't choose anyone but Kane. Also, if we remember that mysterious message, it's getting more and more clear that episode 6 is going to show us the real Kane. With every new episode, his madness and weird behavior get more and more obvious, and while in the pilot he was still trying to act like a friendly admin, in episode 5 he straight up mocks the characters and openly shows his anger. I think episode 6 at the time of its release is going to be the most mind-blowing one yet, and I'm crazy hyped for it. On top of that, even the creators themselves are freaked out by this insanely intense race between Jax and Pomni. And yeah, at the time I'm recording this, Pomni's slightly ahead of Jax. But like I already told y'all, that could flip in literally an hour. But if we look at those images as a kind of Easter egg, it's pretty clear these characters are scared and straight up confused about what's even going on. And that just makes it way more fun to watch how this so-called rivalry plays out. And what Kane's gonna do. Because I think it's obvious to everyone that this AI is gonna play a major role in the new episode. Kinger and Gangle are staying steady while the ones at the bottom, let's say, are still breathing down each other's necks. And honestly, I'm way more hyped to see which one ends up being the so-called worst character in the Digital Circus. Either way, we're gonna find out real soon, and I've got a crazy video coming up where I break down every single hint, even the super hidden ones, that basically spill the whole deal about episode 6. But before that, let's go back and take a look at the most important info we were shown earlier. We've also got some text-based leaks floating around, like this one for example, that mention there's going to be a pretty specific or oddly dark joke in episode 6. I think it's pretty obvious that this joke's going to come from Jax. There's really no one else who fits the bill. And we've got that one random line from him too, which honestly has no clear context yet, but something tells me it's definitely aimed at Ragatha, or maybe not. Either way, we all remember the one-word episode descriptions, and episode 6 is tagged as guns. Considering this one's mainly about Jax, I'm almost certain the new adventure is going to be perfectly tailored for him. If episode 5 was chaos, made up of different themes mashed together, then episode 6 will likely be much more focused. The Circus cast probably voted on an adventure Jax didn't like, which made him drop that line, and in the end, he somehow took over and picked the new mission himself. Given the guns theme and Jax's love for anything wild or dangerous, episode 6 might seriously end up being the craziest one we've seen so far. Right now, that's pretty much all the main stuff we know about episode 6, but just recently, Goose dropped an interesting post on Blue Sky saying, "It warms my heart seeing nobody accurately predict how episode 6 is gonna play out." That's a pretty clear hint that the episode's gonna take a completely unexpected turn, but honestly, that just makes it way more fun, right? Gooseworx also posted a pretty cryptic message on her X account that fans instantly took as a possible hint at episode 6 dropping soon, and honestly, that theory makes total sense. I'm on the same page too. Episode 6 is very likely to release much faster than episode 5 did, and there's a few solid reasons for that. If you remember, the short wait between episodes 3 and 4 was because they were developed at the same time, but when episode 4 came out, barely anything was ready for episode 5 yet. Now, though episodes 5 and 6 are basically two halves of the same story, so it's super likely they were worked on simultaneously. And if that's true, then I'm pretty confident we'll see episode 6 either by late summer or sometime in early to mid-September. Also, on top of that, Goose might have been hinting at a pretty interesting Easter egg that they'll probably sneak into episode 6, and to figure it out, we gotta go back and remember one particular scene. As you might have noticed, the evil version's lineup was missing Gangle, and for a lot of people that felt like a mystery. But Goose actually gave us all the answers and even described what she would have looked like. For some reason, I've got a feeling that this tiny detail might actually turn into a small storyline the creators could cleverly play around with in the new episode. But of course, that's just a fun little fact and nothing more. We all remember that episode 5 was originally supposed to be focused on Ragatha, then Gooseworx surprised us by saying it would be equally split between Jax and Ragatha, but based on what we actually saw, I can confidently say episode 5 turned out to be Ragatha's episode. Sure, we learned a few secrets about Jax and got a tiny glimpse into who he is beneath the surface, but the main storyline was definitely all about Ragatha, which means episode 6, just like it was originally planned, is going to be way more focused on our favorite rabbit. And if the spotlight's on Jax, then the events are obviously going to revolve around him too. And since Ribbit played such a major role in his life, not showing him, or at least not bringing him up in episode 6, would honestly feel like a crime. And if we go back to that very image, the first thing that struck me as odd was the fact that Gooseworx specifically highlighted it. If you take a closer look at the drawing itself, you'll instantly notice how much Ribbit actually resembles Jax. Just look at how Goose portrayed his expression. It's crazy how similar it is to the kinds of emotions we've seen on Jax's face in so many different moments. Now think about this. If the creators had no plans to show this character again, then why go out of their way to design him with that much detail and then even officially confirm who he is? If he was just going to stay a piece of backstory, there'd be no point in giving him that kind of spotlight, especially since Goose isn't really into pushing fan theories or hyping stuff just for attention. Remember that old leak of Jax in the maid outfit? That thing's been floating around for over a year if I'm not mistaken. And while everyone thought it was a joke back then, now we've seen it's actually canon, which means it's totally possible Ribbit might appear in the next episode too, considering that official art and everything I just laid out. As always, I'm waiting for your thoughts in the comments, but let's keep going. By now you've probably realized that Ribbit has to show up in episode 6, and the only question left is in what form we'll actually see him. There's a solid chance that Ribbit might actually be that strange mannequin we've seen popping up in multiple episodes. At first it didn't seem like much, but after the final scene in episode 5, it's starting to look like this mannequin could play a pretty big role in the digital circus. Maybe that's Dr. Football, or maybe it is Ribbit. His consciousness transferred out of the abstracted form and into the mannequin's body. After all, we know Kane has the power to manipulate the very minds of the circus residents, so it's totally possible he brought Ribbit back to sanity. But I think this whole theory deserves its own deep dive. For now, let's keep going with the early scenes and leaks from episode 6. Right after episode 5 dropped, we got that teaser showing Regatha sitting alone. And seriously, am I the only one seeing that same mannequin in the background? Going back to that teaser, it's super clear this is the very next moment after Regatha walked off screen, so it's probably not some random time skip or separate flashback. It really feels like this is a direct continuation of episode 5. Sure, some might argue that it takes place in between episodes 5 and 6, but I've got reasons to believe that episodes 5 and 6 are actually one massive connected story, with the events flowing straight into each other without a single break. Everyone's already seen that so-called leak that says episodes 5 and 6 are split between Jax and Regatha, and yeah, we've already talked about that today. But let's not forget the theory that these two characters are actually connected, so their stories are unfolding side by side. Episode 5 leaned more into Raggy's perspective, and episode 6 is shaping up to focus more on Jax. So in that case, episodes 5 and 6 are really just one huge story that got split in half, but still follows one continuous plotline. That's why the teaser we saw works as both the ending of episode 5 and the beginning of episode 6. It makes perfect sense, especially if you look at Regatha's mental state by the end of episode 5. She's clearly falling apart, and judging by that final scene, she's dangerously close to turning into an abstracted monster. I think that's exactly how episode 6 is going to kick off as a straight continuation of episode 5. We'll probably dive a bit deeper into Raggy's storyline first, and then it'll all spiral into the chaos Gooseworx teased way back in December. And all that chaos? Most likely tied to Jax. Which honestly makes you question everything we saw about him in episode 5, like what if none of it was genuine? What if this dude's actually trying to use Pomni for something?